All right, real quick, bone in or bone out? What kind of wings you like, bro?
You know, there was a long time there. I was a boneless guy. Like, I don't know why, but probably the last 10 years, that was dumb. Like, bone in. Like, that's a wing. That's the only way to eat a wing is if the bone in.
Do you think it's because of the quality of how it's not as much chicken and more breading, or is it just it's just more?
It tastes better. Like, everything about it is better.
I would agree with that. We sometimes don't agree on these, but I'm with you 100% there.
Yeah, we usually don't agree on anything. That's kind of the beauty of this relationship.
That's awesome.
Welcome into another edition of the Varsity Locker Room podcast. I'm Nate, along with Matt over there.
We picked this one right, didn't we?
Oh, man. This was by far the best Frickers of Lima game of the week that we have picked. We've been way off on a couple of them.
Super off.
And this one definitely lived up to the billing. It was Bath at Salina. Salina won this one 36-35 after scoring a touchdown and converting a 2-point conversion with just 2 seconds left.
Unbelievable.
Caden Wirtz caught an 11-yard touchdown and also caught the 2-point conversion to
Didn't you
give
say
his
you got to
team the
see
win.
that too? Like it was like
there's a clip going around social media where it's that last play. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't like, they ran their route, they did their thing. It was a nice play design, but he wasn't standing all alone in the back corner of the end zone. The back defender was there. He went up. I mean, as he jumped, it just went over his outstretched hands, fell into the arms of Wirtz, and then the 2-point conversion. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Bath trailed that entire game until they fought back. They took the lead on a Mikey Hale touchdown with 1:50 left to go in that one. The Salina head coach, he said, though, that the moment Bath scored that touchdown, he was up and down his sideline telling his coaching staff, we're going for 2 when we score here. They knew before they even kicked the ball off to him that they were going for 2 after they scored. He said he didn't want anybody to be surprised. Yeah. He didn't want anybody to be like, oh, what are we doing, and panicking. He wanted them to think about it the entire time. That way they could think about it in the back of their mind. Hey, what's the play we want to go here? And obviously, it paid off and it worked.
As a former assistant coach, I would tell you right now, that would distract the crap out of me.
Well, in all fairness, shiny lights distract. You don't like the Walpock Stadium and the flashing lights because you can't handle it.
And I would have put so much thought in that 1:50, whatever it was. And as soon as my play wasn't picked, I'm pissed.
I'm sure you would have picked the one they would have gone with, right? Like you'd have had the, yeah.
Well, that's why I'm not coaching.
6 different players scored touchdowns in that
game. All
these
names.
Salina's Parker Berkey, Bobby Morris, and Caden Wirtz. And then for Bath, Mikey Hale, Josiah Clark. And I wrote Mikey Hale again on this, but actually I meant Zach Welsh. They all scored touchdowns. It was a high-scoring affair, a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. Salina QB Bobby Morris was 16-24, 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. Caden Wirtz had 7 catches for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns, and John Lutz ran it 13 times for 71 yards. Bath QB Zach Welsh, he's had a great year.
Yes, he
has.
And,
this isn't a bad game, but for him, I'm sure these aren't numbers he's used to seeing. Only 187 yards through the air, 17-29. He had 2 touchdowns. He did rush for a touchdown as well. Mikey Hale did a lot of the ball carrying, 25 carries, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Josiah Clark added 4 catches for 48 yards as he led that Bath receiving core. With the win, Salina, they created a 3-way tie for 3rd in the Western Buckeye League. It's them, Bath, and now St. Mary's all sitting at 4-2. That left Defiance all alone for 2nd as they sit with just the 1 conference loss. And everybody looking up to the big bad Walpock team undefeated at the top of the conference.
I mean, the hard part about this, right, is somebody has to lose. That's the tough part about it. But, all these teams, I'm sure, in the back of their minds, and their coaches know this, they're getting ready for the playoffs. And nothing gets you better, nothing gets you more prepared than these tough games.
So. Absolutely. And, both those teams, even though they're sitting about middle of the pack there in the Western Buckeye League, both of them sitting in fantastic shape for the postseason. So we saw what Salina did last year on that run that they made, and I am sure that Bath thinks that they're going to have more success in the postseason this year than they did last year.
I would agree with you on that.
All right, time to move on to this week's game of the week. As this week, we went a little different route, right? Like we've always kind of looked, and we've had some matchups against conference top of guys and things like that. This week, though, as the season has moved on and things have kind of get shuffled around, we just get good matchups right now, games that we think are going to be really good once they get out there on Friday night, and that's the way we went this week.
That's 100% we did, and I'll tell you, it seemed like in two conferences that we looked at, there was just a lot of imbalance, it looked like, on paper. Now, that does not mean that's what's going to hold up when the football is, thrown in the air and kicked off. But
that's why they play the game, Matt.
Bottom line is, what do we got here?
All right, this week it is Shawnee at Van Wert. And our game of week, as it is every week, is brought to you by Frickers of Lima. We're now for the fall season. Stop by and get select appetizers half price after 9 p.m.
Delicious.
Perfect for after ball games, practices, or to end a long work day. And this one has a lot of history in it. These two teams have met quite a bit since 1972. Van Wert, though, is currently on a 5-game win streak, and they have the overall record right now of 27-14 against the Indians.
So there's a whole class that hasn't beaten Van Wert.
Yeah, unfortunately. And both these teams, though, they started off really well. They had a good week 1, week 2. The offenses were going. They had some wins. But things got a little bumpy for both of these teams, and they have been struggling ever since. Van Wert, on the they are coming off that big overtime victory against Ottawa Glandorf, a back and forth battle where QB Briston Wise really shined. He went 21 of 26 in that one for 199 yards and a touchdown. He did throw an interception. He carried the ball 36 times for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Probably drove the bus home too.
Briston Wise continues to lead the Western Buckeye League in rushing as the quarterback. He is the top rusher in the Western Buckeye League with teams like Walpole, St. Mary's, Defiance. He is number 1, and he does it all in that quarterback position. He's having a fantastic year. His top target is Micah Cowan. He got back on track this week. He had 8 catches for 83 yards. And a couple of new names. We always like to highlight the guys who got things done, and we haven't had a chance to say their names yet this year. Xavier Kelly, he had 2 touchdowns for Van Wert. Gary Hillary had 1 touchdown as well, as a lot of people were getting into the scoring effort there for the Cougars. Shawnee, on the other hand, they had a rough week. They had to play St. Mary's, and it wasn't a good week for the Indians. They just could not figure out that Rough Riders rush offense, which, quite frankly, a lot of teams have really struggled with. I mean, that's just been a part of that. And they're going to have to find a way to fix that on the defensive side of things.
That's the only way to stay in the game. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, well, we just talked about it. It's Briston Wise bringing in that prolific run game. He's averaging over 150 yards on the ground. He has 13 rushing TDs. They've got to find a way to be able to slow him down if they want to stay in this one. Another challenge for the Indians, right? They're being led by their backup quarterback, Caleb Bacom. He is a senior, though. He has starting experience. Yep. It was a tough week to draw your first start of the season. Yeah. You're coming back from –
good point.
Excuse me. You're coming back having to face a extremely difficult team. You took over in the first quarter against Walpock, another really difficult WBL team. So we'll see if he takes that step forward this week. They're going to need him to against the Cougars. His top target, my son Michael Garlock, he is still in the top 10 for receiving, except despite having a few down weeks. Shawnee's going to have him find the end zone, though. He's still looking for that first touchdown of the season. If they want to come away with this victory, they're going to have to find ways to put points up. The area of weakness for Van Wert is this defense. They have to find a way to score, even if it's in a shootout. Even if that's what it turns out to be, they've got to find a way to come away with a lot of points.
Shawnee doesn't put up 28. They're going to struggle.
And, the thing that's really been exposed on this Shawnee team over the last couple of weeks is that secondary. They've given up quite a bit of few plays, and they're going to have to find a way to shore that up because with Micah Cowan coming in, I mean, this is a kid who had a 17-catch, over 200-yard performance earlier this season. They know how to get him the ball. He knows what to do with it. They've got to find a way to slow him down and the rest of those receivers. But I do think with the offenses of both teams and how they're playing right now, this one has the ability to be every bit of that Bath Salina game, a high-scoring affair, coming down to the end, a lot of drama. We could have another really good game on our hands this week.
Well, that's why we picked it, brother. Let's head on into the conference rundown here. This is brought to you by Style Insurance, looking out for you and your family for over 100 years. Top-tier agents who treat you with respect, get you the answers you need when you need them. Great agents, great company, local high school supporters, and let's jump right in the NWC. Columbus Grove at Fort Loramie. Actually, we had a 50-20 game here. Columbus Grove pretty much dominated.
Turns out they're good at football. Huh?
They are pretty good at football, but did you see my first stat here? Fort Loramie actually had 279 yards offense. Grove, 310. I mean, that to me kind of jumped out of the paper right there for him. Columbus Grove, in general, did what they did. They're ranked second in the Associated Poll in Division 7. They kept the Redskins from scoring thanks to its 3 interceptions. Grove also held them to about 70 yards below their passing average. Trenton Barraza had 2 picks. Oh, no, not Trenton. That's Gavin. Gavin had 2 picks in that game. His brother Trenton, however, who's the star running back, he finished the game with 19 carries for 145 yards and a touchdown. He was really struggling until he got it going there late in the first half. They actually held him to his lowest yards per carry for the game. So, a lot of positive things that Fort Loramie did. Kyle Hopkins got, I think this is his second or third game where he's leading Grove as a quarterback now. And he's stepping in for best. He completed 8 of 12 for 94 yards. He threw his first touchdown pass to Brady Basinger for 2 yards. He also hit Grant Ebersol for a 22-yard TD. Gabe Hart, we know the stud from Fort Loramie, was 16 of 26 for 175 yards, but as I mentioned, was picked off 3 times. I'll tell you what, you take those 3 picks away, Nate, and you put that yardage little stat I gave you there, I bet that game's a little more interesting.
I'll tell you what, though, it's impressive what Grove has been doing. We a little bit of a look ahead for everybody. I've been talking with Trenton Barraza, and we're going to have an opportunity to interview him. We'll have that up on the YouTube page probably next week. This week, it'll be our interview with Levi Green. But they're doing what they're doing with their 3rd string quarterback.
Correct.
And they don't need him to be this guy who comes out and throws the ball for 300 yards, right? Just manage the offense. Don't make big mistakes. 9 of 12, you'll take that. It may not be 100 yards and 3 touchdowns, but it's enough of a threat that it gives Barraza some space, and eventually he wears you down, which I think it sounds like happened here. He may have been bottled up in that first half, but because of the way that he runs, he eventually found the space he needed, and that led to this victory.
Right. Well, and again, I think it talks about the balance too. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they're creating interceptions because of the pressure of their D-line and the studs they got up there. So nice, solid victory for Grove. Bluffton at Crestview. Bluffton 42, Crestview 0. The Knights were held to just 95 total yards. And as the Pirates gave their second consecutive shutout. Pirates ran for 256 yards, and passed for 91. Bluffton averaged 6.2 yards per rush. Crestview struggled, only got 12 yards on the ground, and I know their coaches talked about it all year. They're just keeping to grow, and that's a tough week to grow when you're playing Bluffton. The Knights amassed 83 yards through the air. They were 10 of 24 in their attempts. Tate Geesey ran for 58 yards on 9 carries. I get that right?
Finally. It took a couple of weeks.
I got to say his name here later. I'll hint you. I'm going to say his name later. I'll probably screw it up then. He completed 8 of 13 passes for 91 yards and 3 TDs. No interceptions. Stackhouse rushed for 81 yards and 1 TD. He also snared two catches for 18 yards. The senior Worcester had 77 yards and 1 TD on 12 carries. Sophomore Parker Lavelle ran the ball 7 times for 14 yards. Yep. Bricker added 12 yards on 4 runs with 1 TD. Bricker also caught 3 passes for 47 yards and 2 more scores. So add a brick to the Bricker.
I love it when you ask a question and then answer your own question.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Is that 14 yards? Yeah. And then we keep on moving. Yeah. I love it when that happens.
Hey, that means you're answering it. And, I used to look on other people's paper to find answers. Now I got my own. That's a big difference. LCC next up played Delphus Jefferson. It was all T-Birds early, all T-Birds off. And I know you had the call.
Michael Quadman had a game, didn't he?
Yeah, Michael had a nice little game. He had 2 picks. I think that's actually going to put him tied for him and the Barraza boy. I think he's a sophomore.
They're both at 4, I think, right? Because I know coming in, Michael had 2 and then obviously doubled it with the 2 on Saturday.
Yep. Let's see. Quarterback Luke Rohde, was struggling a little bit, had some pressure, but I'll tell you what, those Jefferson kids played hard the entire game. It was hot.
It was. Well, and it was tough for them coming in, too, because they had to do it without Carter Agner, the starting quarterback.
Yep.
They've been struggling anyway. The injury bug really grabbed them this week. They thought that Agner would be able to play defense. He didn't last more than 1 series. I got a text message during that game because my brother-in-law coaches over there, letting me know what they think is going on with him. Doesn't sound good.
Man,
he may be done for the rest of the season. Kellen Brotherwood, their starting wide receiver, was really struggling with injury, and I think he plays in the secondary for him as well. And just what they were going to need everybody in order to be able to hang with the T-Birds. It was not a good week to have that many injuries go down.
So let's finish up with a couple more stats here. Parker was 5 and 9 for 137 yards, one touchdown. He had 53 yards rushing and a touchdown on 9 carries. Lawson Flores got in the zone with a big sweep in the first half. Carter Lesher scored on runs of 13 and 25 in the second half to bring, Lime up to the 56 points that they had.
You Thunderbird fans got to be happy with those freshmen you got the chance to see. I mean, show some
Big,
depth.
strong
And
kid.
yeah, if for some reason they're taking carries later, they can carry that load for sure.
Absolutely. I know big thing for the T-Birds is just got to get Matthew Quatman back healthy. He sat out again. He was close, kind of a game time decision, but hopefully he gets back out there this week. Allen East at Spencerville. Spencerville's led by quarterback Orr, who basically took a solid lead into the fourth quarter, 23-6. Not a lot of stats here, not a lot of love in the paper, but I did actually find some stuff on Max Preps, and Keegan Jones throws a 70-yard bomb in the fourth quarter, gets the ball back, 3 and out, goes for a 40-yard bomb. I mean, Nate, they were just turn and go, baby, turn and go. And they cut that thing to 23-20, but then the Bearcats bowed up and held them out of the zone there again. Allen East had 257 yards, 143 of that passing, 114 yards rushing. Spencerville had 237 yards total offense, 33 yards passing, 294 yards rushing. Spencerville won the turnover battle, forcing 2 turnovers. That's a big win for the Bearcats. And as we talked about, they're in.
Yeah, for sure. We thought it was only going to take maybe one more victory, and they got it against a team that is going to win a few more games before it's all 100%.
So Spencerville is going to be really excited to get that under. That was something that was homecoming for him too.
Nice. All right, moving on to the Western Buckeye League. First, the Elida Bulldogs. They traveled to Defiance in a battle of the Bulldogs. Defiance, they did not let this one get away from them. Let's put it that way. Defiance, they ran their win streak to 5 games, their longest since a 6-game streak that stretched between the 07-08 season. You got to think that they had last year on the mind. After blowing an 11-point lead in last year's game where Elida ended up winning, they just smothered this Elida offense. They only gave up 124 total yards of offense to Elida. Only 16 of those yards came in the second half. They forced 2 turnovers, stopped the fake punt play. They were all over the Bulldogs. They couldn't really get anything going. Anthony Wilder for the Defiance Bulldogs, he ran 14 times, 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. Noah Gomez had 83 yards on the ground and 2 TDs. Brett Zetfeld, he finished 9 of 12, 113 yards and a touchdown. His TD pass to Jordan Wright. I lost my place. Here we go. Here we go. His TD pass to Jordan Wright was his 43rd career touchdown. With that touchdown, that moved him to first place in school history.
How about that?
And you got to think that Zetfeld's only going to add to that total as the season goes on.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, congratulations to him. Yeah, he's a senior.
Nice.
So congratulations to him. This season, I think a lot of big things were expected of him, and then almost got taken away from him. He had that knee injury early that a lot of people weren't sure if he's going to be able to come back from. He did. He's throwing TDs. He's got the school record. Good for him. Moving on, Kenton, they took on number 6, Wapak Canetta, and Wapak just does what Wapak does. Caleb Moyer was almost perfect in this one. He accounted for all but 66 of their offensive yards as he racked up 432 yards of total offense. He had 5 total touchdowns. He did it on 23 of 25 passing for 350 yards, along with 78 rushing yards on 12 carries. He threw for a TD. He ran for 4 more. Wapak comes away with a 42-21 victory. His top target was Caden Page. He had 12 catches for 161 yards. Jarrett Mullen added 6 catches for 79 yards. And Grant Stauffer only had 1 catch, but he made it count. It was a 57-yard reception that he ran into the end zone. And then a new name alert, Andre Longsworth. We haven't called his name yet this year. He got his first TD, running one in late for Wapak. Kenton did keep this one close, right? It was close through the first quarter.
I saw that.
Yeah, it was 7-7 after an 82-yard drive. But after that, they didn't score again until the 3:37 mark in the fourth. Corbin Johnson for Kenton was 15 of 20 for 146 yards with a touchdown. He also threw an interception. He ran it 11 times for 67 yards, ran one in. Zane Perkins had 4 catches and a TD, while freshman Wyatt McKenzie added 54 rushing yards. Kenton did have a defensive TD. We love being able to highlight defense around here. And defensive back Ty Coombs had a fumble recovery that he took back 30 yards for a touchdown.
Score.
I'll tell you what, somehow this Kenton team has only won 1 game. And we talked about this earlier today when we were kind of recapping all these games with each other. I don't know. You don't know. It boggles my mind that somehow this Kenton team, with the way that they've been playing this year, still only has the one victory.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. But hey, that's why you play the games. And guess what, fellas? You got another one coming up. Let's go get that second victory.
All right, Shawnee and St. Mary's. We already covered the Shawnee side of this, which unfortunately wasn't a whole lot, as St. Mary's won 42-0. Dominic Osborne had 16 rushes for 82 yards and a touchdown. Colton Mayberry, 12 rushes for 81 yards. And Caleb Schmidt, 15 rushes for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. And just to pour a little bit of salt in the wound, St. Mary's, the team that rushes and rushes and rushes, threw a pass.
Ooh.
And it was a 35-yard touchdown.
Didn't you have like some stat for that where they don't ever score?
They don't do that. That was a rough one. They definitely caught Shawnee off guard on that one. It was a perfect time to throw that one. And that really helped open things up for the Rough Riders as they moved to 5-2 and 4-2 in the conference.
How about a little overtime?
Ottawa Glandorf Van Wert, overtime game this week. Van Wert's Briston Wise shined. We talked about his big game for them with all the yardage that he had. Ottawa Glandorf, they had a big game of their own. Peyton Coleman, he threw for over 200 yards. Grant Evers had a couple of touchdowns. He ran for 140. The offense for Ottawa Glandorf has been looking better and better every single week. They've been putting up a lot of yardage, and this one unfortunately ended on the wrong side for them, as a 2-point conversion for the Cougars was good, and Van Wert gets their first conference win of the season.
Nice. Let's move over to the MAC. Marion Local versus Fort Recovery. Justin Knopf completed all 8 of his passes for 187 and connected with Victor Holscher's favorite target, Griffin Bruns, and Camden Eifert for touchdown passes. Eifert added a rushing touchdown also. Drew Louse had 2 rushing scores. The Indians were held to just 33 yards as Marion tallied 232 of its 431 yards in the first half. Again, Marion Local's pretty good. I think you knew that before you listened. Anna at Versailles. Anna scored their first TD to open up the game, a 4-yard pass from Alex Shappy to Osborne. And then Osborne covers up a fumble in the second quarter to get them their 13-0 lead. Versailles scores in the third quarter, and that was it. 13-7. I'll tell you what, that would have been a fun game to be at, because that thing probably hung and swung, and we knew that was going to be really close, and we almost had that as our game of the week. Next up, St. Henry at Parkway. St. Henry came in and dominated 48-13. We always talk about our spreads, Nate, and we actually have this one coming up here as one of our discussions. But Drew Pasture, he picked that one just right. The spread was perfect, and that shows up for you in a negative way. We'll get to that later.
It shows up for me in a good way, too.
Redskin quarterback Charlie, well, you were trying to cheat and act like it was a win, but go ahead. Charlie Waring threw an incompletion on his first pass of the night, but he completed the next 11, finishing the night for 11 of 12 for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 2 scores, racking up 82 yards on 10 carries. And despite that, he only literally played 1 series in the second half. Parker Brewer ran for the 2-minute drill to perfection, as they were talking about in the article I read, and hit Ashton Minnick to make the score 35-7 at half. But after that, it was pretty much putting up mop-up time there, and Parkway looks to try to get off the schneid this week. New Bremen versus Minster. Minster went out 21-0 in the first quarter, and then New Bremen settled down. They got it to 21-7 at half, while Minster held New Bremen to just 69 yards on the game. The score ended up being 48-14. The New Bremen quarterback, Dickey, he was 18-31 for 262 yards. Muther had 8 catches for 196 yards and a touchdown. Minster just spread it everywhere. 8 receivers. He was 18-27, 273 yards. Brogan Steffi, 2 touchdowns, while also rushing for 126 yards and 3 touchdowns on only 8 carries.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's efficiency right there.
That was that's some pretty good blocking. I'm sure he gives a lot of credit to his O-lineman. Coldwater at St. John's. Coach Otten, how about that? Just rack up another one, Coach. 200 wins Friday night. That's a pretty cool thing. That's a heck of a legacy. All Cavaliers here. 21 points were scored in 34 seconds in the first quarter. I don't even know what happened there, but Blockberger really efficient. 7 for 8, 141 yards. He threw for 1. He rushed for 2. Caleb Shore had 102 yards rushing. Delphus St. John's out another stud on their side. Boggs, their quarterback, did not play.
Man, they just cannot catch a break.
Nope. And they were only able to manage 64 yards of total offense in the game.
All right, moving on to the NWCC. We start with Perry as they traveled to Corey Rawson. They get the big 28-3 victory. Isaiah McFadden had 21 rushes for 142 yards and 3 TDs. The Commodores looking better and better here every week as we move through this one. They're trying to get themselves into playoff contention. Waynesfield Goshen, they traveled to Elgin. Waynesfield scored 14 straight points to win their third straight game. They dropped Elgin out of a tie for second place in the conference as they knocked them off 21-14. Upper Scioto Valley, Ryan Roberts and Maddox Underwood combined for 308 yards against Dayton Christian. And they did that all on the ground. Roberts had 201 yards on 15 carries and 3 TDs, along with 41 yards receiving. Underwood was almost equally split as he had 103 yards through the air, 170 yards on the ground with a TD. USV was in control from the start. They've won 6 straight, and they sit all alone atop that NWC right now after the 30-0 victory. It says 30-0, right, Matt? Not 31?
I think so.
Oh, 30. Okay, yep. Good. Because I'm pretty sure that spread was 31. I think I got that one right.
Sure
we'll check that later, though, just to be sure.
You're right on that one.
Hardin Northern and Ridgemont, what was looking to be the game of the week, ended up being a real defensive battle.
Yes, it was.
As we both were really surprised. I mean, to the point where you asked me if Nolan Hobson was hurt. Like, for this one to be so low scoring, it felt like an injury had to happen. It wasn't. He was just slowed down. He only ran for I say only, but he had 109 yards on the ground and a touchdown. And that was after 3 of his last 4 games had been over 200. That 4th one was only 199 yards. I'm not sure the defensive game plan that the Gophers came up with, but obviously it was effective.
Worked.
They held Hardin Northern scoreless until the 9:36 mark of the 4th quarter, and they outgained Hardin Northern 203-172. So Hardin Northern now with the 1 conference loss, Ridgemont with the 1 conference loss, and USV sits all alone undefeated in the NWCC. And to round out that conference, Ridgedale, they went to North Baltimore. North Baltimore picks up the victory 32-13.
Big win. All right, let's talk about Lima Senior. Lima Senior had Toledo Rogers roll into town, homecoming for the Spartans. He kind of struggled in the first half.
Yeah, man, that's an 8-6 game at halftime. Unbelievable.
Yeah, but then they got things rolling. Janias Hall finished 23-39 for 365, 3 TDs. That almost looks human for him. That's kind of weird.
Right? That's a down day for him.
Exactly. He did have 2 picks. Montre Davis, Boog Wilson, Keon Smith, and Kalik Walsh all scored offensive touchdowns. And there was a defensive score by Tavion Banks, who returned a fumble 73 yards for the score for the Spartans to close it out 37-6.
7 straight. They are still undefeated and chasing that 10-0. Moving on to Ada. They just get another BVC victory. They used a 22-point first quarter to cruise to their 5th straight win. QB Levi Green had another big game as he had a total of 251 yards through the air and on the ground. He added 2 touchdowns. Caleb Hickman had 4 catches for 123 yards and a TD. Running back Kane Fisher rushed for 121 yards and 3 TDs as Ada moves into a tie for second place in the BVC.
All we had to do is move a couple letters, right?
Yep. I'll tell you, listen, that big 35-7 victory for the Bulldogs. I had a chance to talk to Levi Green over the weekend. We were going to do it earlier last week and try to drop it last week, but some scheduling things came up. We weren't able to do it. Ended up talking to him yesterday, Sunday afternoon. Seems like a great kid. You know, you can tell why he has really transformed this Ada team and what they're doing. And look, as I talked with him about it, you know, everything is in their own hands right now. They control their destiny.
Yep.
They have 3 games left, 2 of them against Lipstick and Pandora. They win. They got a conference championship. They're sitting great in position for the playoffs. Things have really turned around over there for the Bulldogs for sure.
Go Bulldogs.
And we're going to wrap up our recap with Findlay as they took on the undefeated Anthony Wayne Generals. Landon Eckelberry was 24 of 30 for 313 yards and 2 TDs, along with 78 rushing yards and a TD. Jacob Ragland had 7 catches for 165 yards and a TD. They led this one late into the 3rd quarter, but then Anthony Wayne took control, and they stay undefeated, knocking off the Trojans 34-25.
All right, let's head into our players of the week. I have Tate Kesey. He probably has deserved this a couple times, and it's way overdue for someone on this team. You know, they do a nice job of spreading the ball around, but last week he threw for 3 TDs, which took him over 15 for the year. He ran for almost 100 yards, which took him over 500 yards rushing for the season. I'll be honest with you, he's been on my list every week. He just had a game against LCC. And bottom line is, congrats to you, player of the week. What a fabulous season you're having. Just keep it up, young man. You're a stud.
And I stayed in the Western Buckeye League for my pick. I went with Walpock QB Caleb Moyer. He has been by far the most efficient QB in the entire Western Buckeye League. And he showed why. He went 23 of 25 this week, 350 yards, along with 78 rushing yards on 12 carries. That was 432 yards of total offense, 5 total TDs. He was 95% of the Walpock offense. He's been doing this. It's kind of like what you were just talking about with Tate. Caleb has been doing this week in and week out. We could have picked him almost every single week. It was time. He deserved this a long time ago. He put this team on his back. He led them to a big victory, and those guys are going to go home with a couple of T-shirts, man. I've already talked to somebody over at Walpock, made the connection there. So we'll be getting these things out, and we'll get Tate's up to Bluffton to him as well.
All right, man, let's jump into what we got coming up this week. So we got Groves at Crestview. Crestview is a heavy underdog here in this one. They've actually only won 7 times in the 30 times that these two teams have played. Crestview's got their young quarterback. He's getting experience every week, and Grove is just dominating on both sides of the ball. You know, if Crestview wants to keep it close, in my opinion, they cannot turn the ball over. Barraza's leading the league in rushing. He's went over 1,000 yards. His brother's got the 4 picks. So, you know, I think this one's going to be an uphill battle for the Knights. They got to control the ball. Bluffton, they head out to Fort Loramie, 7-0 Bluffton against Fort Loramie, 3-4. Again, large spread here. Pirates are riding back-to-back shutouts. I don't think things are going to get very easy for the Redskins here. Look for the Pirates to stay balanced. They have that real nice RPO, that run action. I will tell you, though, I mean, Fort Loramie stacked the box against Grove, and I talked about how they turned the ball over. You know, the 3 interceptions, they're going to throw. That's what Fort Loramie does. They set the run up with the pass. So the bottom line is just keep those turnovers limited while you're throwing the ball, and you know, maybe this one turns out a little different for Fort Loramie this week. LCC 5-2 at Spencerville. These teams have played 20 times with LCC holding a 17-3 advantage. Spencerville, however, is coming off a huge win on the road at Allen East, and they have multiple threats in the backfield. If you add up all 3 of them, they have their 1,000-yard rusher. So the bottom line is they're just spreading the ball out. They really like to run the sweep. They look to take advantage and control the clock. LCC, we talked about Matthew. We'll see if Matthew's ankle injury is better. They're going to rely on Purnell, Hefner, and Falke to try to take care of, keeping that sweep from going. Knotts and Schneiders on the end. LCC is favored actually by 3 scores in this game, but that's why you play the game.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
right.
at Spencerville.
Yeah, I mean, I know we don't usually dive too much into LCC, and especially what's going on with Matthew and things like that. But I do think that you're right. It is key for this LCC team as they move through these last couple of weeks that they get a healthy Matthew Quatman back in that backfield. We saw kind of what this offense can do and how it kind of took a big step forward when they got back to putting the ball in his hands. And I've said this on a lot of different platforms that I've been on, not just this podcast. When the LCC has to find a way to put the ball in Matthew Quatman's hands, that is their best case for success. And it has nothing to do with this podcast or you or anything. It's just the facts. Like, Matthew is just a dynamic runner. He can do a lot of things. And I think that you saw that in that loss to Bluffton, that they obviously they were missing him back there. Last week they were able to get it done and give him a week off. But I don't know that they can afford to be missing him for too much longer. Hopefully Matthew's healthy and he comes back.
Yep. Allen East versus Delphus Jefferson. Allen East 3-4. Jefferson is 1-6. Jefferson holds a 3-game advantage in this series, which, by the way, has been played over 5 decades. So That's a long time.
A little familiar with each other.
Exactly. Allen East is a heavy favorite here. They're going to rely on Keegan Jones, a young sophomore quarterback. Like I told you, he can chuck it. And we know Jefferson, who has got the Agner kid. Who knows if he's going to play or not?
Yeah, I don't think so.
He's shut him down.
Yeah, I think he's done for the season. If the injury report that I got on Saturday was accurate, he's not going to be able to come back.
Well, that'll probably make it a little harder for them. But hey, that's why you get these young kids experience, and I'm sure they'll be ready to play come Friday night.
All right, the Western Buckeye League, a bunch of good matchups this week. Bath against Defiance. Bath leads the series 28-23, but Defiance has won the last 2 matchups. Defiance is coming off that big shutout victory over Elida, and they sit with the 5th best team defense in the entire league. Bath, they come in with that top scoring offense. Something is going to have to give here.
Yep.
The big thing with the Bath Wildcats, though, is that they are second to last in defense. That is the big bugaboo for them, and especially if you look at their games. that offense has been able to score against pretty much anybody in the Western Buckeye League. It's been the defensive side of things that has really let them down when they needed it the most. Bath is going to be trying to bounce back from that last second loss to Salina and keep their, it might be some outside hopes, but they're hoping that maybe a couple of crazy things happen here over the last 3 weeks and they can stay in the running for that WBL and at the very least work on some playoff positioning. Wapak, they are traveling to Elida. It does not. The Elida Bulldogs right now are through a stretch of their schedule that is very, very daunting. Wapak is only giving up right around 14 points a game. That is tops in the WBL. They are second in scoring offense. They haven't shown a lot of weaknesses so far this year. Every team that they've gone up against, they found a way to get it done and get it done rather easily. And this Elida team, they've been really hot and cold over the last couple of weeks. They had that big game against Bath where they didn't win, but the offense looked absolutely phenomenal. It was a basketball score, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that was great. They come back the next week. It's a low-scoring game, but they find a way to win.
Yep.
And then
it's a big point getter.
Yep. And then they come in this week against Wapak. I wouldn't count Elida out. They have players. They have talent. They have one of the best linemen in the entire state in Parker Krim. They have a playmaker in Amari Wash. But everybody is going to have to be at their absolute best this week. Wapak has dominated this series. They own a 35-16 record overall. And currently, they are on a 10-game win streak against Elida. Moving on.
Streaks are meant to be broken.
You're not wrong about that. Kenton, they travel to St. Mary's, and then this Kenton Wildcat team that we talked about, we cannot believe that they don't have a victory. Like you said, it doesn't get any easier as they have to take on the Rough Riders. This is a matchup, though, between the top rushing offense in St. Mary's, as they are averaging over 300 yards a game, and the top passing offense, 302 yards per game. I mean,
there you go.
Yeah. It's when you have two teams that are such polar opposites on offense, you just don't know what's going to happen because St. Mary's can just bleed the clock on you. And if you're Kenton and you love to throw so much, if every pass that hits the turf stops the clock, and that just gives St. Mary's more time with the football. So we'll see what has to give. Kenton has been playing teams tough week in and week out, but they're going to need a big performance this week against the Rough Riders if they want to get that upset. The defenses will end up being the story in this one. St. Mary's in the top half of the league, Kenton in the bottom half. The run defense for Kenton has really had some issues. They're going to have to step up big time in this one if they want to stop that three-headed monster from St. Mary's. We already talked about Van Wert and Shawnee. That is our Frickers Alignment game of the week. And to wrap up the WBL, Ottawa Glandorf and Salina, a sneaky good game. We looked at this one really close for our game of the week. There's a lot going on to this one.
Yeah, Salina could have a little hangover after that big victory. OG
could have a letdown too as they lost on a last-second one. I mean, these two teams played very close, very competitive games. This one will be a fun one to watch. Salina comes in averaging over 240 yards on the ground. Will be facing the top rush defense in Ottawa Glandorf. They're only giving up 113 yards per game. They're the top defense overall in the Western Buckeye League. I mean, I don't think anybody marked that on their bingo card coming into this year that the Ottawa Glandorf Titans would be the top defensive team, but they have done a great job week in and week out. John Lutz and Bobby Morris for Salina will look to make sure that the Bulldogs don't have a letdown after that last-second win over Bath. You don't want to get caught looking ahead either. Meanwhile, absolutely not. And then meanwhile, OG, they're going to be looking to help their playoff chances and move above 500 in conference play. Their QB Peyton Coleman had a big game last week, but he's going to need to cut down on those turnovers. He's thrown 6 interceptions so far this season, and you cannot let Salina have free possessions. This has been a close series over the years. Salina, they have a 26-25 edge, and they are currently on a 2-game win streak against the Titans. This should be a fantastic game. I can't wait.
50 years of history.
Yep, I can't wait to see how this one plays out.
Let's over to the MAC now. We got Marion local is at Anna. They are a 29-point favorite, and the Rockets have only won one time in 20 years of them playing, or 19 years.
What did you just say? Streaks are meant to be broken?
They are meant to be broken. That's right. They head into Anna. They're traveling, but they are inching closer, by the way, to that 57 victories, which, not a lot of people are talking about. But that's
which is weird. It's the longest win streak in the country. It's about to set a state record, and you're right. It is very, very low-key, which frankly is probably how Coach Goodwin and the Flyers like it.
Yeah, that's probably why. He probably just told him, no, I'm not talking about it. Versailles 5-2 at Minster 6-1. Again, Minster's a heavy favorite here, but tie will be broken, bud. This series is tied 12-12. Minster is led by QB Steffi, who's a dual threat, and I'm sure the Versailles coaching staff is just trying to think of anything they can to slow that kid down because he is just a stud.
Yeah, he is.
They're going to look to rebound after a tough loss to Anna last week, but Minster's a three touchdown favorite here is with the analytics. So we'll see what happens. I'll be watching that one really close. St. Henry's is heading over to Delphus. They hold a 1-game advantage in this series, but we know how banged up Delphus St. John's is. So, I look for St. Henry to just keep running the ball effectively, this week, and I think they'll take care of St. John's. We got New Bremen 3-4 at Coldwater 7-0. The Cavaliers, I feel like they're just in maintenance mode, man. They're just working on stuff. They're just getting better. They're at home against New Bremen. New Bremen, will have to get their running game going. And I really think they just need to limit possessions for Coldwater because I feel like you give Coldwater the ball, they just score.
Well, and you got to think that, I mean, we know the coach speak, right? 1 week at a time, all those good things. But you got to think that Coldwater every week is working on at least a little bit of something that they think is going to benefit them week 10 with that big matchup against Marion Local coming up.
You're probably right. To wrap up the MAC, we have Parkway and Fort Recovery. Both teams are 1-6. Parkway's at Fort Recovery. The Indians will welcome the Panthers into town. Somebody's going to get to 2, man. So QB Boer for Parkway. He's in the upper half of passing stats in the conference. And Fort Recovery, we know what they do. They just run Wendell, man. They run Wendell and they run Wendell and they run Wendell. So, 2 different styles like you talked about, kind of like your other comparison. I don't know what's going to happen here. This one has got me a little more interested. If the Panthers can capitalize and get some big plays out of the air attack, I think they can keep this one close, man.
All right. The NWCC. Couple of good matchups happening this week as that conference race is really coming down to it. Perry's going to take on Waynesfield Goshen. A couple of win streaks at stake here as the Commodores have won 2 straight coming in. Waynesfield has won 3 straight. Somebody's coming away with the loss as the Waynesfield Goshen. This is really the first time they've gotten this late into the season, and they haven't been playing for that conference title the last couple of years, but they've done a nice job of bouncing back after a couple of losses, and we'll see if they can keep that going against the Commodores. USV takes their unbeaten conference record on the road as they are going to take on Elgin. Elgin coming off of that 7-point loss last week to Waynesfield Goshen, looking to see if maybe they can't pull the upset and knock off USV. The Upside Valley offense has just looked phenomenal the last couple of weeks. Maddox has done such a good job. Ryan Roberts is coming out of nowhere. They're doing a great job. And, this is the time of year that you want to be doing that and you want to be peaking. And I think the Rams, they are sensing that conference titles within their reach. And I don't expect to see a letdown this week against Elgin. Hardin Northern looks to get back on track against Crestline. Nolan Hobson, you got to think, is going to be hungry to get some rushing yards racked up after he was held in check this past week as the Polar Bears look to get back into the winning side of things. Ridgedale and Corey Rawson, 2 teams that are really struggling this year in the conference as they will look to see if they can't get back on the winning side of things. And then North Baltimore, they're going to travel to Ridgemont. The Gophers trying to stay alive in this conference race, just the 1 loss, looking to see if they can't knock off North Baltimore. Lima Senior, they take their undefeated record, and they are going to welcome Toledo Waite into town. As Lima Senior, we talked about it, they got off to a rough start to get things going as far as this last half, 8-6 at halftime. Very uncharacteristic. But if you're Coach Lawrence, you have to be happy with how your team responded, right?
Absolutely.
You could easily have had a lot of kids shutting down and going, what's going on? Things aren't going right. Yep. This isn't what we're used to. But they regrouped at halftime. They got it together. They come out in the second half. They run away with that one. And, this is another big win or a big game in the TCAL for them, as they have to go on the road the last 2 weeks. They got to go to Scott and they got to go to Start. They got to get through Waite first, though. Ada continuing to see if they can't make a march at the BVC title. I'll tell you what, that last second loss to Arlington in week 2 has to be eating away at those guys. We talked about that a little bit with Levi, and you could just tell even teaser. And I didn't even like want to bring it up. I just said, hey, you guys are just a last second loss, and you could just see it on his face, like it still haunts those guys. But Ada sits very well. They still control their own destiny in the BVC, and they take on Van Buren this week. And Findlay, they are going to welcome Perrysburg in as the Trojans have really been scuffling. This has not been the season that Findlay or their fans thought that they were going to have. A lot of fanfare coming into this one. They lost Ryan Montgomery on the first drive of the first game of the season. Landon Eccleberry has done a fantastic job filling in for him. He's put up really big numbers, but they're going to have another great performance out of him to hang with the Yellow Jackets.
All right. Well, this is the HP Enterprise Pick of the Week brought to you, and it's actually turned into Nate's brag session. So I'll just add that to HP Enterprise's logo. It's your go-to source for residential rentals. HP Enterprise understands a perfect home is more about four walls. It's a roof about discovering a place where you can truly feel at home.
And if you guys heard all that, that is a lot of bitterness coming from over there.
It's
really
not
my fault that I keep getting these right.
If you were so successful at this, why does your FanDuel account just show negatives?
Well, because I'm not picking high school games.
All right. Okay. That's it. Hopefully it doesn't get to that.
It was a good week, though, for me. I really do. I was happy with it. We were messaging back and forth. 2-0-1 this week. I ended up backdooring it.
And you get, what do you mean good week? You have 1 point and you have a push. Which
Whatever.
You tried to claim as a victory on
win,
the text message
Friday night. A win is a win is a win.
All right. Let's go.
How many wins did you have?
Not enough.
There we go. All right. All right. Looking up at week 8, Matt, what do you got here, man? Let's see. You Parkway at Fort Recovery. Fort Recovery, a 20-point favorite in this one.
Who are you taking?
I'm going to take Fort Recovery. I know that both those teams are kind of scuffling. Parkway has the new quarterback or the new coach, coming in. We were we were high on Parkway at the beginning of the season. We love that little that interview and the energy that he brought. And I still think that he's on the right track. He's just playing in one of the toughest conferences in the entire state. It is what it is. But I like Fort Recovery in this one. I give me them and the points.
All right, your next one is you got
Walpock at Elida plus 38. God, you know what? This one is really hard only because we have seen Elida be able to do things on offense. Walpock, though, is so dominant. Yeah. Give me Walpock. Walpock 38. I think that they cover that one. And that one is a really tough one for me because I do think that Elida has talent all over there. And I think if they get it all together in one night, they can play with anybody. They just haven't been consistent enough for me yet. And then finally, Van Buren at Ada. This is easy. Give me Ada. I am a believer in the Bulldogs. I love what Levi Green's doing. Kane Fisher over there. They are having all sorts of success. I think they walked through Van Buren. And week 9 and week 10 are going to be very interesting over there in Ada. All
right. So you got me picking Allen East minus 27 versus Delphus Jefferson. I'm going to take the Mustangs, especially now that you told me Agner's now.
Yeah, I probably should have saved that information until after you picked.
Appreciate that heads up.
That was a mistake.
I'll take you got Anna plus 29 versus Marion Local. That is a home game for Anna, and I will lean on the 50-some victories of Marion Local, and I'm guessing they're going to cover that. And we got USV at Elgin. I would say that in this game,
it is a plus 27. Elgin, the underdog.
I will take USV. We'll just stay local here, man.
All right. Well, we'll see. Don't worry. I will be very much keeping track of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not a good segment.
At 8 a.m., we'll be getting text messages back and forth from each other.
My favorite part of the segment is just texting you when I pretty much have it wrong the first time I text you, and you're like, no, that's not what you did. And I was like, oh, man, I read that wrong.
All right, moving on to our upset surprise predictions of the week. They are brought to you by Healthy Kids Running Series in Lima. They are a national nonprofit organization that engages communities and families by providing an inclusive youth running experience for kids 2 to 14 years old, while inspiring them to believe in themselves and lead an active and healthy lifestyle. To find more, follow their Facebook page, Healthy Kids Running Series Lima OH, or email limaoh@healthykidsrs.com. They just had their week 2 here down in Froat Park in the bowl. That they do it every week down there. It was a beautiful day, a lot of kids out there.
Man.
Yeah, it's an awesome
about that. I was like, I had never heard of this, so hopefully we're getting them a little bit more kids to show up. And parents, if you're looking for something to do, I mean, nothing like getting your kid to go have fun and run around and burn some energy.
Yeah. So, all right, I will take my licks on this one because I definitely patted myself on the back on the picks. I couldn't have been more wrong on my upset pick last week. I took Elida. I thought that was going to be a 1-score game.
It happens.
And then I even got my bonus pick wrong because I thought for sure Amari Wash was going to go 3 weeks in a row with a return touchdown. Yeah. I got all that wrong. I'm going to redeem myself this week, though.
What do you got?
I'm going to go with Salina, who is a 7-point underdog against Ottawa Glandorf. The defense from OG has been incredible, and that offense really is looking better as the season has moved along. But I just think that Salina has too much firepower.
That's a lot of points in that game. I mean, that's a coin flip game for me.
So, and not only do I think they're going to cover, I think Salina comes away with a victory on this one. So, yeah,
OG.
Yep, I saw this one and
there.
I jumped all over this one real quick because I think Salina takes home the victory.
Here's another one that the math didn't. I didn't understand the math on. Bath is a 3 TD underdog to Defiance.
That math ain't mathing.
I don't know. I mean, if they can. I mean, Defiance has got a good defense, so they're gonna have to show up. I just don't see it. I think Bath needs this game to keep getting themselves ready for the playoffs. Defiance looks to be hitting their stride though, so we'll see what happens. I like Bath to come back in this one and keep it closer than 3 touchdowns.
All right, time for our good call, bad call officiating feedback of the week.
It's a video one.
Brought to you by MacQ Properties, serving Allen County and surrounding counties since 2006. The best view is with MacQ.
So we'll give the officials a little bit of a break here and not make it too questionable on this one. I will tell you it is basically an onside kick, and when you look at the clip, you're going to decide, did it go 10 yards or not? It was called that it did go 10 yards. Did you get a chance to look at it yet?
Yeah, I saw it.
It's
so close.
I know.
It's so close.
Yeah.
I from the angle that the video is, it's almost impossible to tell because it looks like the ball has to go 10 yards, not the player. And it looks like the player's at the 50 and he's reaching back behind him, which means, I'm not a smart man, but that would mean that the ball is not at the 50 if we're reaching behind us. So I was thinking no dice, but we got told they called it good on the field.
What they called
and
it.
It's so close, man. Like,
Really
I mean, I think either way that you go with it, you could argue the opposite side, but you have to stick with whatever you see in the moment, live at full speed.
Well, and I'll tell you what, for those officials, it's kind of numbing because Lima Senior does it after every score. I know they didn't score like 15 touchdowns like they have been, but the bottom line is every time you got to expect an onside kick, and you're watching that thing, and it could kind of probably lull you to sleep. So, hey, interactive this week. Which way do you think it went? Was it a good call? Was it a bad call? The call on the field was it did go 10 yards, and the Spartans were awarded the onside kick. However, they were not allowed to move it forward and take the yardage that they do. There, so. Yeah.
Which, my favorite thing about this segment, we started this thing and you're like, this is what we're going to do way back, before we started this show. Every week you get a little bit nicer and nicer to the officials. I think that this segment is having the absolute opposite effect that you hoped that it would have. I think you're starting to relate to the officials. I think before too long, we're going to see you, instead of wearing the jersey of the team you like, you're going to be wearing the zebra stripes because you're going to be go team officials.
The most officials that have ever known me on a sideline, they would probably agree with you 100%. I think they all think I'm the nicest guy and never question anything they do.
All right, man, that is going to wrap up another edition of the Varsity Locker Room podcast. I cannot believe that we are only a couple of weeks away from the playoffs.
And
it's incredible.
How about no sweatshirts yet? I mean, we're looking 77 degrees on Friday.
And so outside of a horrible rain weather,
night,
but it was even warm that night, though. Like, it wasn't even like it was cold. So we've gotten very lucky, which you know what that means. Is once we hit playoff times, it's going to drop. We're going to be sitting out in sub-zero temperatures. It's going to be absolutely miserable. But we cannot wait because that is officially football weather.
That's right.
All right, got anything else for us before we get out of here?
That's it, man. I just see this thing 0-0 still. We're still watching in the background here, Detroit and Cleveland. See what'll happen in this series.
All right, have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week inside the Varsity Locker Room.